They felt and they strongly believed that in order for a black to get elected to Congress, they had to be in a majority black district. Now, I got elected in a 4% black district, so I knew it wasn't true. But they believed that that was the only way. They felt and they strongly believed that in order for a black to get elected to Congress, they had to be in a majority black district. Now, I got elected in a 4% black district, so I knew it wasn't true. But they believed that that was the only way. That was the only way.
Hello and welcome to Insights from Abroad. This podcast is part of the Middle East and South Asia Initiative in the College of Sciences and the University of Central. My name is Roxanne Trombetta. Our mission here is to educate, engage, and influence the international community. Today, I am joined by Representative Gary Franks. So that listeners are aware, Representative Franks has served in the House from Connecticut from 1991 to 1997, becoming the very first African-American representative from the state. Moreover, he is also the seat in a district that consisted of overwhelmingly white constituents. He held numerous positions during his time in office, including within the Armed Services Committee, the Commerce Committee, and the Small Business Committee. He has also served as chairman of the Republican Party Task Force on Welfare Reform and the Defense Conversion Panel of the Armed Services Committee. Since his career, Representative Franks has pursued teaching at Georgetown University and Hampton University. More recently, he has published 2 books entitled With God, For Country, and The Political Aberrations. Representative Franks, thank you for joining me today.
Good morning, Roxanne.
Good morning. So let us begin with the start of your political career. The races in which
Goes way.
Good morning. So let us begin with the start of your political career. The races in which
Goes way back.
Yeah, not too far back. The races in which you participated and won were tight ones, let me say. The results for 2 of the elections demonstrated that you ended up winning the seat with 52% of the vote, while your second running showed a win with % plurality. With registered Democrats in your district outnumbering Republicans 3-2 in the first election, was there a certain policy platform or campaign strategy that you felt gained you the slight edge?
Well, it was always extremely difficult because most people said that as a black, that white was discouraging. And then other people said that because I'm a Republican, black people wouldn't vote for me. So they eliminated just about the entire population in my district. My district was 92% white and 4% black. What was the most important thing for me to do was to get experience in the morning and say, hey, I want to be a congressman. I may have thought that when I was in college, but I started at the lowest possible level. So I tried to build up grassroots support for my efforts. I also started as a member of the city council. And so I had a host of achievements in the black community and in the white community when I was a city councilman for 6 years. I had stopped a mayor that was very corrupt, who eventually went to jail for 13 years. The president of the Republican Party in Connecticut went to jail for 11 years, and also went to jail for a number of years. So I built up credibility within the community because I was stopping corruption in the city, and I was also increasing funding for organizations that would help the Hispanics and blacks. So when I ran for office, even though you said it, 3-2, 3 Democrats, I had worked across party lines. Now, what was difficult? The most difficult part was raising the money. In the campaign, that's the worst part of the job, Roxanne, because you have to literally get on the phone almost every single day and beg for money. Because you have to literally get on the phone almost every single day and beg for money. And you usually start at the highest possible. Can you give 1,000? And then, oh, okay. Can you give 500? And it's really a very painful type exercise. My opponents in all of my races outspent me tremendously. And when someone is running commercials, like 3 commercials, saying that they're better than you, et cetera, and you can only afford to run 1 commercial, after a while, it becomes extremely difficult. But ironic as well. When tested, people remembered my commercials more than my opponents. And when they were asked, they said, well, they never seen a black person on TV talking in this manner. And so in many instances, Roxanne, I would go to a restaurant and I would see, because it was such a unique thing to see a black guy talk on the screen. and this is 1989, 1990, So it's not like now, obviously you have President Obama, you've had Colin Powell, et cetera. So that helped me, even though I was outspent every time. My name ID and the fact that people recall, even though I was outspent every time, my name ID and the fact that people recalled my commercials more than my opponents was a big plus. And then what I also did, I never responded to negative commercials. Never responded to negative.
Which is completely different from today's
political arena. Which is totally different from today's way of doing things. I talked about what I wanted to do, my vision, and I felt that good people would vote for me, and the others, well, someday I would represent them, hopefully. Awesome. And so it was difficult. In the race that you referred to, that was 44%. It was a situation where everyone thought I was an aberration. In fact, that's why my book is called, this is an accident, so anybody can get rid of Franks. So what they did, I used to joke about it all the time. It was like people going to McDonald's and saying, I'll have a Big Mac, French fries, a soda, and I like to run against Gary Franks. I said, get in line, okay. And literally at debates, I had 8 people in my debates. They wanted to run against me. 3 of the people didn't even live in the district. I think 1 just moved into the state. But they all thought that it would be so easy to beat this black guy. And because of that, the person who was the Democrat candidate from one part of my state thought that she deserved the nomination. And she was a female candidate. She had on the cover of Parade magazine for running against me because I supported Clarence Thomas during the nomination. So that was the year in which people said, oh my God, anyone who supports Clarence, oh, it's terrible. And so she made the cover of Parade magazine. And so she felt that she was entitled to get to. There was a guy in Waterbury, my hometown, where most of the Democrats would reside, who had been a probate judge for like 20 years and had the most popular family name in the city. He felt that he was entitled to be the nominee. And they never reconciled his differences. So they both ran. so now it was a 3-way race because they almost staked out their territory. The person from Waterbury, the eastern part of my state, wouldn't go west. And the lady from the western part of my state wouldn't go east. So they just literally were regional candidates.
Cancel each other out.
Exactly. So I won by, you said I got 44% of the vote. I won by 13 points because none of them could even muster more than their vote. I won by 13 points because none of them could even muster more than their simple base. And so it was kind of comical. But, God is good. It's all, in many instances, when I won my first election, my poster told me that I should prepare a concession speech. This is 1 week before the election. Said it was impossible for you to win. Said it was impossible for you to win. I said, well, what are the polling numbers showing? Oh, you're down by 8 points. And this is Thursday. You got to have a grand slam during that debate on Friday. I said, well, how am I doing with blacks? We don't know. I said, wait a minute. You're saying I'm down by 8 points and you don't know how I'm doing with blacks? Well, you figure, just assume that it's only 4%. What the hell am I making a difference? I said, well, how am I doing with Hispanics? We don't know. Well, I put a mayor in jail because they were going after the Hispanics in Waterbury. They wanted to give the Hispanics a remodeled supermarket for a school. I stopped that. The mayor's mother, and that's why the mayor went to jail for 13 years. So I knew I would do well in the Hispanic community because of what I had done. But that didn't, phase my poster. And then I had the debate, and this is, God in action. I was doing somewhat poorly with women at the time, he said as well. So at my last, doing somewhat poorly with women at the time, he said as well. So at my last debate, it was scheduled for like 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock. My wife was with me campaigning in the western part of the district, and my wife was experiencing pains in her side. And being the trooper that I was, I said, hang in there, we'll be all right. So she didn't take kindly to those words, and she said, I'm going to the car. And she went to the car, and my staffer came back and said, Alderman, we got to get out of here. I said, what do you mean? We got another half hour? Your wife is really angry, and she's in the back seat of the car, and she said to get you now. I said, okay, I'll go. And she was laying in the back seat, and I said, you're all right? And she said, I got pains in my side. And my staffer said, I think we should go to the hospital. And I said, yeah, that's a good idea. So we took her to the hospital, and I had a debate at 8 o'clock. This is like, and the debate's on the other side of town. So anyhow, we get to the hospital, and the first thing the nurses said, they go, hey, one thing we know for sure, your wife is not pregnant. I said, I know that. I said, but she is actually bleeding right now. And they said, well, we're going to run some tests on her, et cetera. And then the doctor came in, and the doctor said, well, Mr. Franks, we looked at her, and we're going to have her rest for a little while, but we know one thing for sure, she's not pregnant. I looked at her, and we're going to have her rest for a little while, but we know one thing for sure, she's not pregnant. And I said, well, I said, I know that. I said, we want to know what's wrong with it. It's probably her appendix, I would guess. And he said, well, we're going to do blood work, and we'll get back to you. Now, blood work results take a while. So I sat there, and people were calling. We didn't have something on here. What's going on here? You're going to lose the debate. They got an empty chair there. They're going to still have the debate without you. I said, I can't leave. My wife is, we don't know what's wrong. My wife is just sitting here in the hospital. And so now it's like 9:30. So my campaign manager called my other person and said, the campaign's over. You were already down by 8 points. No one's going to ever believe that you're not a chicken. And so anyhow, then about 10 o'clock or so, the doctor walks in. He says, I got good news and bad news. What do you want first? I said, well, you can give me the bad news first. He said, well, the bad news is you've lost your wife for the balance of the campaign. I said, wow, that's pretty bad. I said, well, what's the good news? You're going to be a daddy.
Oh, I just got goosebumps.
And I went, what? Yes, the pregnancy is in her fallopian tube, and she's going to have bed rest throughout the pregnancy. But congratulations.
Oh.
Now, I have this secret, no cell phones. So we get in the car, and we drive back. We call the people at the campaign. And they're saying, oh, all the TV cameras are here. They're writing your obituary. It's all over. I mean, this is really, really ugly. We're looking for other jobs, et cetera, et cetera. So I get almost 11 o'clock now. And all the reporters are saying, we're going to have you on live. Because they're really upset. They are really, really disturbed. And so they go, 4, 5, 3, 2. So, Mr. Frank, everyone's screaming at me at the same time. So, why did you miss the debate? What's wrong? You're afraid of Martha? You're afraid? What's my wife is in the hospital. Oh, she's in a car accident. And this is live on TV, 11 o'clock news. And I said no. And I said that my wife's in the hospital, and I just found out that she's pregnant. All the females in the room had tears in their eyes.
Oh.
And it changed tears in their eyes.
Oh.
And it changed everything. And then my opponent stepped in it. His campaign manager went over to the reporter and said, yeah, that was some act by Mr. Franks. We'll see in 6 months whether or not it's a girl, a boy, or a that became the news story.
Yeah, what a headline.
Yeah. So everywhere I went that whole weekend, all the women came up to me and said, oh, Tommy Moffat, he called your wife's pregnancy a ploy. I hate that guy. I hate that. And overwhelmingly, I won the female vote. Ended up winning by about 6 or 7 percentage points. And I called my daughter, who's now 28, the campaign baby. Because it was the announcement of her birth on live TV. Not her birth, of the conception on live TV that actually was 15 point swing in like 6 or 7 days. So God is good. So that's something to be noted. And in the second election, everyone wanted to run against me. So it was in the third election, I don't think any Republican lost. I mean, literally, I think that's the year we took over Congress, and I think almost lost. I mean, literally, I think that's the year we took over Congress, and I think almost every Republican, even running for governor, won. Jeb Bush may not have won, but George Bush in Texas, I think, won that year.
So we're talking about media a lot, and it seems that you really know how to play the media when it comes to like identity politics and all that. But what advice can you give in regards to dealing with uncomfortable media attention?
Just be honest.
honest.
It's very simple.
Yes.
And I've been tricked by the media many times by being naive. I'll tell you the funniest one. The funniest one, a reporter came up to me and said, Congressman Franks, I understand you believe in term limits. And I said, yes, I do. I just don't know when it should start. I always said that as a joke. But anyhow, and then the reporter said, well, you believe in term limits and you're only 30-something years old, then maybe, maybe at the time I was 40, maybe you would want to run for a higher office. And I said, well, I don't rule anything out. So he said, well, we know that you and Senator Lieberman are extremely good friends. I said, yes, Joe Lieberman and I are good friends. Our wives they're good buddies. And you have a Republican governor today. I said, that's right. Republican governor today. I said, that's right. And guess what I saw in the headlines the following day? What? Congressman Franks to run against Chris Dodd. Now, did I say that? Did you hear me say that?
No.
Hear me say that?
No. The media heard it.
The media, their deduction was, if I'm ambitious, and the governor is a Republican, and the other position, one of the senators I like, they deduced that I'm running against Chris Dodd. I never said it.
1+1=3.
So that was my first time of saying to myself, even when you're just being, just totally truthful, they can twist it. Okay. And it became a big story because it seemed as though I was worried about running for the Senate in 98 versus running for re-election in 96. Yeah. And people don't, running for re-election in 96. Yeah. And people don't typically, I wouldn't feel comfortable with a person who's running for an office only to get to that other office. It's like, I'm like, he doesn't really want to be there. He wants to be of it. And that's what they did. And so, but you live and learn and you kind of, I won't say laugh and get over it.
And understand that it's going to happen anyway.
Yeah, sometimes things happen that you can't prevent. But for the most part, you just be honest and just straightforward, and that's it.
So I want to talk about something that's kind of not controversial in your political career, the CBC, the Congressional Black Caucus. When creating bridges, just being a member and being a Republican between the African American community and the Republican Party, because you introduce more conservative ideals, to their dialogue. What do you think is the importance in doing this, especially in your time in the late 90s or early 90s?
Well, there are two viewpoints, in that I haven't seen a coin yet that only has one side. And so I've always looked at it from a historical perspective as well. Back in the 19th century, there were 22 blacks who were congressmen, people. And people go, wow, how did that happen? And people go, wow, how did that happen? But keep in mind, most of the states in the South were majority black. Mississippi was majority black. Yes. Alabama was majority black. Maryland was 40-something% black. Virginia was 40-something% black. So most of the South was black. So most of the South was heavily black. South Carolina, the entire constitutional office holders were all black. But they were all Republicans. And I thought that was, I said, all eggs in one basket. And we had this election called the Compromise of 1870, 76 or 78, I always get that confused, but during that period of time, and you had Rutherford Hayes running for president and a guy by the name of Tilden. You never heard of Tilden because he never became president. But Tilden actually got more votes than Hayes. The compromise was the Democrats said, we'll take the election away from Tilden and give it to Hayes if Hayes would agree to a few points. Now, the major point, as all this history would show, was the removal of the Northern troops from the South. And that was bad. From the South. And that was bad. Because when the Northern troops left, the Northern troops were enforcing the law because of the situation in the South. And because at one time, Roxanne, believe it or not, if a black person looked at a white person dead in their eyes, it could be very tragic for that black person. It could be very tragic for that black person. And if a black person were in a store getting ready to buy something and a white person walked into the store, they got to get back in line. They got to get back. Now, the police were there. I mean, the military was there. So the military was saying, hey, you can't do that anymore. Those days are over. The black guy forcing the law. Mm-hmm. Believe it or not, if a white person liked your coat, they could say, hey, that's mine. And if you argued, then you probably stole it. And they would take it from you. Now, a captain would come over, you can't do that anymore. So when all those things were taking place, it was helping. Reconstruction, it was called, was actually helping the black community tremendously. But the white community did not like that. And so they were willing to sacrifice almost anything, even the election of their own, to be able to get rid of the Northern troops so segregation can go back to its regular form. Now, Frederick Douglass was the leading black public figure, even though you had black congressmen and senators. And one person, Rutherford Hayes, in his bio, it would say that he conferred with Frederick Douglass from the South. Rutherford Hayes in his bio said, I don't know what this guy's talking about. It was never discussed. And what would make anyone think that I would be in favor of the troops leaving the South? And so when that happened, because everyone was in it, all the Republicans were black, and all the Republican, because everyone was in it, all the Republicans were black, and all the Republican congressmen, they thought the best thing would be to have a Republican in office. Not realizing that, no, the most important thing was having something that would actually help the black community. So I've always said, imagine if there were one person there who was a Democrat, a black Democrat, and he raised his hand and said, I don't think this is a good idea. This is not a good idea. There was none. Yeah. So when I was running, and I said to myself, and I said to the Black Caucus, and the biggest achievement in that area was on racial gerrymandering of districts. Mm-hmm. They felt, and they strongly believed, that in order for a black to get elected to Congress, they had to be in a majority black district. Now, I got elected in a 4% black district, so I knew it wasn't true. But they believed that that was the only way. So when I opposed what the administration was doing on supporting racial gerrymandering. Didn't go over too well. When we got back, they voted to kick me out. So within 6 hours, I went back, motion to get rid of the gentleman from Connecticut. And I said, whoa, what's, you shouldn't have stood up like that. You shouldn't have pressed. I said, we all had the right to address the president. You weren't calling on me. In other words, I was sitting there right in the first row. Okay, you can speak, Mr. President. Thank you for, and I stood up. I said, Mr. President, this is a bipartisan organization. I'm the only Republican in the room, and they have not allowed me to speak. Can I address you? And he said, yes, certainly. And I told him my views on welfare reform, and I told him my views on NAFTA and a few other issues, and I told him my views on racial gerrymandering. He disagreed with me. He felt that, hey, we need to have majority black districts. Now today, I represent white districts. So I feel so good about that. And yes, President Obama has augmented that tremendously, because obviously now everyone knows that white people, guess what? Would vote for a black guy. It's not something that, white people have a problem with. No, people are people. They're good black people, they're good white people, they're bad white people. It warms my heart to see, a congressman from Princeton, New Jersey, or congressman from Las Vegas, or a congressman from Utah, black congressman from Oklahoma, so, and that's the way it should be. We should not, I said this first, you shouldn't have brown districts and red districts and black districts. Mm-hmm. We should have American districts. And I said, have brown districts and red districts and black districts. Mm-hmm. We should have American districts. And I said that many, many years ago.
So I'm curious, what is another polarizing issue that was dominant when you were attending these CBC meetings?
Well, anything that had to do with welfare reform, because that was a very hot issue at the time. Yes. And people just felt that the Republicans were cruel individuals, and they were hurting folks, and this was not going to work. And now, obviously, many years later, it's been proven that it's been very. Mm-hmm. I wrote several provisions of that bill that weren't perfect, but are in existence today. One is the debit card. Back in the early 90s, you really didn't have debit cards per se. The banking industry embraced it quickly. They said, hey, it's going to cut down my lines on the third monies. The electric industry embraced it quickly. They said, hey, Congressman, we charge everyone who pays their electric bill more money because we have to factor in that certain people aren't going to pay. so we can change our formula if we know that we're going to get this electronic. So we can change our formula if we know that we're going to get this electronic transfer of funds. Landlords liked it. So it was a number of organizations that liked it. The Congressional Black Caucus liked it, and some of the members did. Many of the members did. But obviously it wasn't perfect because you could not get on a bus. You could not wash. Could not do. So we changed the bill in committee where you could get a nominal amount of cash. I think it was $50 or whatever every period, so you can use it for incidental expenses. But the main thing is we couldn't stop bartering. Can a person go out and buy 16 pairs of sneakers and then barter it away? No. Yes, we couldn't stop that, but it would be a printout. And if you got 16 pairs of sneakers, I think I should go to your house and say, where all those sneakers are. And so it's wasn't perfect, but it did a lot to cut down the abuse, especially when many of those dollars were going to support drug habits. So that was always a contentious issue. And so you had a situation where. And unfortunately, it still exists today, where the black family is not as united as it should. Back in my day, in the 60s, you had a lot of two-parent households that were black. And I can't think of the percentage off the top of my head, but it was a high percentage. And it has gone down. It's gone down very badly over the years in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. So we tried to stop that, or at least start to turn the numbers up, and the Black Caucus didn't like some of my comments, and didn't like some of my comments about that, and so as well. So, but
they're important discussions.
They're very important discussions, and trying to think of some other ones that were contentious. But in other areas, they were very happy that I did certain things. Rodney King is a perfect example, but he had about 5 police officers literally kick out of him. And when the trial came up, it was a situation where none of the police officers were convicted. There were riots in Los Angeles, and the White House called me and said they'd like me to come over for a meeting. And I went over to the White House several times, and one time was with the black leadership of the Civil Rights Movement. And I said in that meeting that I asked the president to go after those 5 police officers on civil rights violations. And you can see this on C-SPAN, because upon coming out of the White House, there were reporters there, and I told them what I said. I said, you got to go after these police officers on civil rights violations because you don't need a unanimous verdict. It's a majority. So if you get a 6-4, they're convicted. And so the president looked at the Attorney General, and the Attorney General said, kind of nodded his head and take a great deal of pride in playing that little tiny role in that situation. The caucus appreciated it too, because Maxine Waters wasn't too thrilled because it was her district and she wasn't called over to the White House. But that's another thing. They should get over that. But the bottom line of it is, it was a situation where everyone was very pleased with that outcome, and the way because of my relationship with the Republican president.
Wow. That's amazing. We're going back to welfare reform because I would say that's the most significant role you played in your political career.
No, that's not accurate. No, that's not accurate.
We want to agree?
The Civil Rights Bill of 1991 passed by the largest plurality of any passed by the largest plurality of any civil rights bill in our country's history. I chaired that for the Republican Party and worked with Senator Ted Kennedy on that project. Worked with many members of the Black Caucus. It had been vetoed by the president in 1990. We made certain changes to it, and no civil rights bill has passed by a larger plurality than that bill. I got all the Republicans for it, and it sailed right through. Very, very proud of that. Today, we have what's known as hub zones. I wrote that legislation. It was called the New Markets Fund, the Urban Entrepreneurial Opportunities Act, which had 2 parts to it. One is permanent today, which is the New Markets Fund, which would instill capital as well as technical assistance for all. Secondly, the hub zones. The hub zones have produced billions of dollars for small businesses that are willing to be in an urban area and to develop their business. I wrote that legislation. They were split. They passed it after I left Congress, but it's almost exactly as I wrote it, as my book would show. And very, very proud of that because, quite frankly, it's changed the lives of a number of people. And I'm always for more economic development for individuals in our urban areas, Black, brown, and Hispanic. It doesn't make any difference. And we have to improve. In certain urban areas are really, really suffering, and certain communities are really suffering, and certain communities are really suffering. And it's all about the Benjamins. And so if you have the resources, the good jobs, you have a sense of, when you have that job, you can look forward to getting a promotion properly. You're not looking at situations that are. It's important. And it's the same thing with contracts, with federal contracts or state contracts. Women should be able to grab them. Men should be able to grab them of color. And all those things are extremely important because that's how you have a more robust overall community.
So yeah, I love your outlook on how
community.
I love your outlook on how the economy should work. I love this quote. You were talking about how the welfare system at the time continues to play the role of fish delivery man for able-bodied people, and I completely agree with that. But do you feel like it has improved drastically since then, or is it going in the right direction, or what do you feel about the status on that now?
Well, I think one of the keys, Roxanne, is helping people get jobs, and the training is so important. And another factor is you have children involved, and how does the mother stay home? There's a mother who takes care of the kids. Prior, you really had a lot of grandmas, etc. You still do, taking care of the kids, but you had to look out for daycare. A lot of different factors had to come into play because you could have that low-paying job for someone to take care of your kids, and you look at your welfare check was maybe $300, and you were making $400 at your low-level job, but after you pay all of your expenses, you're actually only taking home $225. I mean, everyone can do that math. You make more money if you did work. And so that's what we try to change, the pendulum of saying that, why did I take them? And then we also try to make the male more accountable. The father should be accountable to their children. And I'm not saying that brown men, black, aren't sensitive and accountable to their kids. No, I'm not saying that. But aren't sensitive and accountable to their kids. No, I'm not saying that. But it's a situation where they must be held accountable for their children more so, and that's something that we also try to look after.
Awesome. So let's fast forward to your recent. So let's fast forward to your recent publications. They open interesting perspectives on politics, some of which at face value wouldn't be accepted, especially in today's political atmosphere, let me say. So in your title, With God, For God, and For Country, because we can do, you elaborate on religion and its important role in the political atmosphere and what it can do for us as a society. So what is your response to the advocates who are quick to say separation between church and state and all that? Well,
I would say that for 200 plus years, we did certain things, stopped in the 60s. And prior to, let's say, the 60s, we never lost a war. We had a tie, but we never lost a war. And you didn't have the shootings that you have today and on the streets with mass shootings. Didn't have that. Now, I would say that, to me, the most important law would be the Ten Commandments. And so I talk about that. And I think that one of the easiest commandments to follow is recognizing the Sabbath, whether it's Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. We understand that there could be a difference in the place. Wow, when did Jesus Christ really get into trouble? Well, he got into trouble because he helped someone on the Sabbath. And the Jews said, we're going to put this guy to death because he worked on the Sabbath. That's how seriously they looked at the Sabbath. And we have allowed the Sabbath day, and we have allowed the Sabbath day to change dramatically. We have what's known as Connecticut Blue Laws years ago, where stores, you couldn't find a store open in New England on a Sunday because it was the Sabbath. And we strayed away from that. We strayed away from that. And we strayed away from that. We strayed away from that. And then and to me, when you look at, we used to have, didn't have to be a school that was a religious school, but just about every school had a moment of silence or prayer. Yeah. Now, I've argued, has there ever been a mass shooting, in a school that has school prayer? The answer is no. Now, all these things, maybe it's just be a coincidence. People can say, well, there was a shooting in a church. Yeah, because the racist guy knew blacks go to church, and they went there. They bombed churches, too. Why? Because black people go to in the mix. Has there ever been a shooting, mass shooting, at a school where they have prayer? The answer is, you can Google it, no. So I say to myself, in our whole history, that has never occurred. Why? And it's so hard to do, right? So that's one of my points. Yeah. And then Thanksgiving Day. As a nation, going back hundreds of years, since our formation, Pilgrims, we took one day and said thank you to God as a nation. Just one day. It was a whole nation we've said thank you. And today, one day, it was a whole nation we've said thank you. And today, there's so much commerce going on Thanksgiving. At first, Roxanne, they were going to have the super blockbuster sales at 12:01. So it wouldn't be Thanksgiving Day at 12:01, 3 o'clock. Then it creeped to 5 o'clock. Then it creeped to 9 o'clock. And now it's like all day you can go to the mall and shop on Thanksgiving Day. Now, as I said before, prior to that period in which this eradication started to take place, we never lost a war. The country was doing extremely well. We had problems. Yes, civil rights problems. We had a lot of problems. Do not get me wrong. We had a lot of corrections we had to make. And now we can't figure out how to get out of a war. We can't figure out how many troops to send to war. So I believe, and I talk about in my book, if you follow God, God gives you that wisdom. He gives you that direction. God gives you that wisdom. He gives you that direction. And you act decisively. And others follow. Because they believe in you, because you believe in yourself, because you're following God. And that's the theme of my book. That's the theme of it. So it really talks about a return to God. Follow God, because the alternative is evil. And unfortunately, these people who are getting shot, not here in Orlando, it occurred here. Yes, they're mentally ill. I can go through it. I'm sorry. I've talked. I'll wrap it up. Yeah. I forgot where I was. But anyhow, let's go with another question.
Okay.
You take
sure. We could, last question. It'll be on your other novel, The Political Aberrations.
Yes.
It showcases the obstacles that people of different demographics may face while climbing up the political ladder. Though these obstacles differ, they can apply to all types of aspiring politicians. Just to round it out, go back to
believe in yourself.
Yes.
Believe in yourself. The Political Aberration is actually a novel. Now you're gonna say, wait a minute, you wrote a book that's nonfiction. Then you wrote a book of fiction. I just like writing. When I was in high school, I wrote as a sports editor, and I just love writing, and it's been something that I always have played around with. I'm not saying people read what I write, but I love writing it anyhow. So I've written 3 books. One was published by HarperCollins that did fairly well, but I just enjoy writing. But one was published by HarperCollins that did fairly well, but I just enjoy writing. But so, and I enjoy teaching as a professor as well. So it's about believing in yourself and realizing that you're not going to always win, and sometimes your biggest losses, what you may perceive as a loss, can be your biggest victory. And I'll tell you one last story. When I ran for state controller, my election was the only election in 1986. I was 30-something years old, early 30s. My election was the only election. And then the city of Bridgeport came in And that was it. And I lost by small percentage points, very small number of points. The first thing that I did, Roxanne, I fell down to my knees and I thanked God for the opportunity. Little did I know that it was that defeat that would launch me on to become a congressman in 1990. Because in that defeat, I proved to people in 1986 that white people would vote for a black guy. And so when I ran in 1990, no one could tell me that, oh, well, you're black and white people are going to vote. You did it before. You did 5th District. Guess what? You voted for me overwhelmingly when I ran for state controller. So don't say that you people in the 5th District are not going to vote for me, because you did. And oh, by the way, I got more votes than any other candidate on the Republican ticket. And that was my argument throughout my race to get the nomination. Now, it took a little while for me to get it, but that's another story. But